In today's video, we're going to make a summer cardigan with ribbed accents along the top and bottom and the sleeves. It's also going to have a V-neck neckline and ribbing all around so that we don't have any curling. We're going to begin with the sleeve, and we want to create this ruffle effect, which is 3 times the amount of stitches we ultimately want for our cuff. So we want our cuff to be 28 stitches and the ruffle needs to be 3 times that amount. So I am going to cast on 84 stitches using the long tail method on my knitting needles. I'm going to create the rib by doing knit 2, purl 2, and then I'm going to knit 3 together to bring us back down to the 28 after I've done 8 rows of that rib. I'm just casting on that 84 right now. And now I'm doing knit 2, purl 2, and I'm going to do this for 8 rows. So now I'm knitting 3 together to bring myself back down to the 28 stitches that I need for the cuff. Okay, so now I've reduced my stitches down to 28 again, and now I'm going to do a knit 1, purl 1 rib for 5 rows. I've completed my rib, and now I'm going to put the work on the machine. So please just be aware there is a right side and a wrong side for this. And you can tell there's a wrong side because there's the purl side over here. I need to put this work on with the wrong side facing up. I'm going to use my loom pick, and this is why I like using circular needles because they're flexible. So I'm going to take my stitches off one at a time from the knitting and just be really careful not to twist. And all I'm going to do is tuck the stitch under the top part of the pin. Don't push it all the way down. And I'm just going to go into each stitch and do this. It's also good to just count your stitches to make sure that you didn't skip anything by accident. So when I'm done, I should have 28 stitches on my machine. And to not twist, I'm putting my loom hook into the front part of my stitch and then just sliding it on like that. And you can tell they're not twisted because the stitch will look like this. It's not going to look like that. This all will tighten up on the machine when I do my first row. Put everything on the machine, and I'm just going to tighten up that last stitch. I'm going to knit 1 row just to secure everything. Make sure the yarn loops around that first notch, and now I'm going to just knit to the end. Now I'm going to start knitting the sleeve itself. So I'm going to do 6 rows of plain knitting, and then I'm going to begin a series of increases. On the 5th row here, which is actually going to be the beginning of my 6th row, I'm going to begin doing increases. So I'm going to do this 9 times. On the 6th row, 9 times I'm going to do an increase. So just be aware that that first increase you do will have to be at the end of your 5th row. So I just did the 5th row. This now technically counts as my 6th row, and I'm just going to advance this machine 1 stitch. So this is now row 6. And I'm going to advance the machine 1 more. While I do this, I'm also writing down how many times I've done an increase. So I just wrote down the number 1 because that was my first increase. Otherwise, I'm going to lose track of what I'm doing. Now I'm back to row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the end of 5, this technically is now the beginning of 6. I'm going to do my increase again. So this is row 6. And do an increase on both sides. And now I'm writing down the number 2, and I'm going to continue. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm going to do the increase because this is technically row 6. And I'm going to do the increase on the other side. And now I'm writing down the number 3. And I'm going to continue doing this 9 times. I'm up to my 9th increase now, and I want to just show you what's going to happen with the machine when we get so close to our pins here. So I'm doing my increase, and just be aware of pin 37. So I'm going to advance this along. This is starting to rise, which is okay. Just make sure it stays hooked under this right here. And now I'm going to do my 6 rows, and it's going to get a little tight. So I'm going to just show you what I do to prevent things from getting messy here. So I'm just going to slide that under, and then I'm going to go back. This is row 2. I'm pulling on this, not too tight, but a little tightly, just to create some tension. Flip it under, and then we're going to slide back. But again, the key is holding that yarn a little tightly, just so that you don't end up with anything too loose. So this is a little further, and now I'm going to hold this tightly and then go back. Here we are again. Flip it under, and then come back. So those are my 6 rows that I did on my 9th increase. Now I'm going to begin doing my armhole shaping, and so I'm going to bind off 3 stitches. So this is 1, 2, and then 3. And now I'm going to put this back on the machine. So the trick to not having this pop off is just hook this under the top part of that pin, and don't even try to push it back down. Just leave it like that, and that will keep this from falling off the machine. And now we're just going to knit to the end, and you see it just kind of flips under by itself. Now I'm going to bind off 3 stitches over here. So this is 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to put this back on the machine. I'm just going to hook this under the top part of that tooth, tighten this up a bit, but not too tight. Put this back in the yarn feeder, and then I just want you to see how this is going to flip under on its own. See? And then we're going to knit to the end. Now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches on each end. Here's 1. Here's 2. This back on the machine, and knit to the end. And now I'm going to bind off these 2. So this first one is just like a slip stitch, 1 and 2. And then we're going to put that one back on the machine as well. And then knit to the end. Now I'm going to decrease 1 stitch on both ends. So I'm going to remove my first stitch, place it on top of the stitch next to it, hook this back under that notch next to it, and then knit to the last 2 stitches. I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to remove this stitch and place it on top of the one next to it. Stitches all the way down to the bottom. And now I'm going to knit back. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. Remove the first stitch, place it on top of the pin next to it, loop that back under, and then knit to the last 2 stitches. Then remove this stitch, place it on top of the one right next to it, push it all the way down, and then knit back to the beginning. Now I'm going to knit 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, and now at the beginning of the 4th row I'm going to do a decrease again, and then at the last 2 stitches I'm going to do a decrease as well, putting that first stitch on top of the one next to it, and then I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches, and knit to the end. Now I'm going to knit 1 row, and I'm going to begin a series of decreases every other row 6 times. Make sure you write down your decreases just so that you don't lose track. So my first stitch, I'm going to do a decrease on both sides. So this is my first row of decreases. So I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. I'm going to remove this stitch, place it on top. This was my first decrease, and I'm going to write down a 1. Now I'm going to knit back. Now I'm going to do my next decrease. And I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. That was number 2, and I'm writing down a 2. Now I'm going to knit back, and now I'm going to do the decreases again. Remove that, place it on top of the one next to it, tighten it up. And I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. And I'm writing down a number 3 because that was decrease number 3. Knit back. Now I'm going to do my 4th set of decreases. Do a decrease on this side as well. I'm writing down a 4. Now I'm going to knit back. And now I'm up to my 5th set of decreases. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So this is my 5th set of decreases. And then knit back. So I wrote down a 5. And now this is my last one. So this is my 6th set of decreases. Now I'm going to bind off 4 stitches. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This back on the machine and knit to the end. And now I'm going to bind off 4 stitches on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then place this back on the machine. And then knit to the end. You should have 10 stitches on your machine, and now I'm just going to bind all of them off. Cut a tail, secure that final stitch. And this is what we have. Here's our ruffle. Here's our rib to kind of tighten up on the wrist. The rest of this is all of our underarm and shoulder shaping, which looks like that. So essentially the sleeve will end up looking like this. Now we're going to begin the back. And to do the back, we're also going to do 3 times the amount of stitches needed to create the ruffle. So the most stitches I can do on the machine are 45. So I've multiplied 45 times 3, so I'm going to cast on with 135 stitches on my knitting needles. And I'm going to do the ruffle the same exact way that I did it on the sleeve. So I'm going to do 8 rows of knit 2, purl 2. I'm going to knit 3 together all the way across to bring me down to 45, and then I'm going to do a knit 1, purl 1 rib for 5 rows, and I'm going to put the work back onto the machine in the same exact way that I did for the sleeve. I will get back to you when I have put the work back on the machine. I've finished my edging and I've put the stitches back on the machine, so I have 45 stitches, and now I'm going to knit flat to get us to the armholes. I've done my 80 rows, and now I'm going to bind off 3 stitches on the next 2 rows. So I'm going to begin over here and bind off 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Put this back on the machine and then knit to the end. Now I'm going to bind off 3 stitches on the beginning of this row. 1, 2, 3. Put this on the machine as well, and then knit to the end. Now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Put this back on the machine and knit to the end. And now we're going to bind off these 2 stitches as well. 1, 2. This back on the machine and knit to the end. Now I'm going to decrease on each end. I'm going to put a decrease at the beginning of this row, and I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. And then I'm going to put that last stitch on top of the stitch next to it. And now I'm going to knit all the way back. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do a decrease right here. And I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. Place that stitch on top and knit to the end. And now I'm going to knit back. Now I'm going to knit 20 rows flat. Now we're going to bind off 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put this back on the machine and knit to the end. And now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to bind off 5 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then put this back on the machine and knit to the end. And now we're going to do the same thing again, where we're going to bind off 5 stitches on the next 2 rows. And I'm just going to put this stitch back on the machine and I'm going to knit to the end. Now I'm going to bind off 5 stitches here, put this back on the machine and knit to the end. So now I'm going to bind off the remaining stitches. Cut a tail and then secure this last stitch and take the work out of the machine. And this is what we have for our back panel. So here is a ruffle at the bottom. It's nice and stretchy. And up here we have our underarm shaping, back shaping, and the other side of the underarm shaping. And now we'll get started on the front panels. Now I'm up to doing the front part of the cardigan. So I cast on 90 stitches. I did my knit 2, purl 2 rib for 8 rows. I then knitted 3 together, which brought me down to 30, and then I did a knit 1, purl 1 for 5 rows. And now I'm going to put this on the machine. And I wanted to show you what happens when your working yarn is now on the right side of your needles. So I need to put this on the machine backwards. So I want to have my wrong side facing up, which is the side with the purls. And I'm going to begin at this end because once I put all these on the machine, I need to be able to then go backwards cranking, and I need to have this working yarn available. So you always just put them on the opposite side of wherever your working yarn is. So I'm just going to slowly put these on the machine. So I just and just be careful so that you don't lose any of your stitches as you do this. So what I'm doing so that I don't lose my other stitches, I kind of put my nail here so that I don't lose the stitches other than the one I'm working on. I make sure that this stitch is kind of secure under my other nail, and then and only then do I slide it on so that you don't lose anything along the way. I've put all my stitches on the machine, and now I'm going to do 80 rows to match the back panel. I've done my 80 rows, and now I'm going to have to keep track of two things at the same time. I'm going to have to keep track of doing 8 decreases for my V-neck every other row. So I have a piece of paper written over here where I'm going to write down every time I do a decrease, and I also have to keep track of my armhole shaping. So I'm going to begin doing my V-neck shaping on the right side of the piece, and I'm going to do my armhole shaping on the left side. But bear in mind, when you do the next half of your cardigan, you have to flip that around, otherwise you will end up with one side that's correct and one side is going to be the wrong side facing up. So I'm going to begin right here by doing my first of the 8 V-neck decreases. So I'm going to take the first stitch and place it on top of the one next to it, and I'm going to knit to the end. So right here, I'm going to write the number 1. On this side, I'm going to bind off 3 stitches. First stitch is always just a slip stitch, and now I'm going to bind off my 3. Put this back on the machine and knit to the end. Now I'm going to do my second V-neck decrease. So I'm going to put my second V-neck decrease on top of the stitch right next to it, and I'm going to knit to the end. And I'm going to write the number 2. On this side now, I'm going to bind off 2 stitches. Put that back on the machine and knit to the end. Now I'm going to do my third decrease. So take that one off and put this on top of the stitch right next to it. We're going to knit to the end. I'm going to write a number 3 because that was my third decrease. Now I'm going to do a decrease on this side. So I'm going to place this on top of the stitch right next to it and knit to the end. And now I'm going to do my fourth V-neck decrease. And knit to the end. And I'm going to write a number 4. Now I'm going to do another decrease on this side. This is the armhole side. And knit to the end. And now I'm going to do my 5th V-neck decrease. I'm going to write a 5, and I'm going to knit to the end. Now I'm going to continue doing my decreases for the V-neck. I'm up to number 5, so I still have a few more to go. But I'm also going to do 20 rows flat on the armhole side so that it matches what I did on the back panel. So I wrote down 20 rows here, and I'm just going to write down every time I do a row so that I don't lose count of what I'm doing. So this is going to be row 1 of the 20. So I'm going to write a 1 in that column, and now I'm going to do my 6th V-neck decrease. And knit to the end. So this is now row 2 of the 20. Now I'm up to row 3 of the 20. So I'm going to write a 3, and I'm up to decrease number 6 of my V-neck. And knit to the end. So this was row 4 of the 20 and 6 of my decreases. At this point, I want to put a stitch marker where I began all my decreases so that when I begin knitting my neckband by hand, I will know exactly where the decreases begin. So just make sure you do that. It's better to do it when you first start doing your decreases, but it's an important step that I always forget to do. So now I'm up to row 5 of the 20. I'm going to write a 5. And now I am up to decrease number 7 of my V-neck. So that was 7 of my V-neck and 6 of the 20. Now I'm going to do 7 of the 20. So 7, and now I'm up to my last of this 8 set of decreases. And to the end. That was 8 of my decreases and 8 of my 20. Now I've added a new column to my stitch counting. So we're done with this one. So now we're just keeping track of our 20 rows. And now I'm going to decrease once every 4 rows 2 times. So I'm going to continue doing my 20, but I also need to keep track of this. This is going on the V-neck side. So I'm going to keep track of the 4. So this is row 1 of the 4 and 9 of the 20. And I'm just going to keep going. This is 2 of the 4. So this is a 2 and a 10. Now we're up to 3. So now this is 3 of the 4 and 11 of the 20. So this is where I'm going to do first of those 2 decreases. So I'm going to take this out. And again, this is happening on the V-neck side, knit to the end. So that was row 4, and this is 12 of the 20. Now I'm going to start the 4 again. This is 1 of the 4 and 13 of the 20. This is 2 of the 4 and 14 of the 20. This is 3 of the 4 and 15 of the 20. And this is where I'm going to do the second decrease. So that was the 4 and that was 16. So now I'm just going to continue knitting flat until I get up to the 20. So this is 17, 18, 19, and 20. Now I'm going to bind off 5 stitches on the armhole side. Now we're going to knit back. Now we're going to cast off another 5. So this leaves us with 2 stitches. Just going to put this back on the machine. Knit to the end, come back, and now we're going to bind off these last 2. And then just secure your final stitch. And let's see what we have. Here is our V-neck right there, and here is our underarm shaping. And here we have our ruffle and our rib. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I did this panel the same exact way as I did the other one with 90 stitches, 8 rows of my pleat, knit 3 together, and knit 1, purl 1 for 5 rows. So I'm going to put this on the machine and I'm going to do 80 rows, and I'll get back to you when I'm there. I put my work back on the machine and I did my 80 rows. Now I'm going to do the underarm shaping, but I'm going to do the underarm shaping on the right, and I'm going to do the V-neck decreases on the left. On this side, I am going to bind off 3 stitches. Put this back on the machine. And now I'm also going to begin doing my 8 V-neck decreases every other row. So I'm going to go to the last 2 stitches right here. I'm going to put this last stitch on top of the stitch next to it. Again, I'm going to be writing down here. That is my first decrease of the 8. And now I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches. And I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches and do my second V-neck decrease. Just put a stitch marker at the beginning of your decreases just so that when you're knitting your neck banding, it just is easy to identify. So we're just going to put that stitch on top. And we're going to write a number 2 and we're going to knit back. Now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches. This back on the machine, and I'm going to knit. Now I'm going to do a decrease on this side and knit to the last 2 stitches, decrease here, and knit to the end. So that is my third of the 8 decreases, and now I'm going to knit back. And over here I'm going to do a second decrease. And I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. And this is my 4th decrease. And now I'm going to knit back. Now I'm back to doing my 20 rows flat, and I'm going to, again, just like I did before, I'm going to keep track of every row that I do and my decreases. So this is row 1 of the 20, and I'm going to do a decrease here. So this is 1 and 5. And now I'm going to knit back. and that is row 2 of the 20. And I'm going to knit again to the last 2. This is my 6th decrease. So that's a 6 and a 3. Now I'm going to knit back. That counts as my 4 of 20. Now this is my 5 of 20 to the last 2 stitches. I'm going to write a 5. And that's my 7th of the 8th. Now I'm going to knit back. That was row 6. This is row 7. And my last of these 8 decreases. Now I'm going to do my 2 decreases every 4 rows. So I have a new category here to keep track of that, and my 20. So this is row 8 of my 20. So I'm going to write an 8, and it's 1 of the 4. This is 9 of my 20 and 2 of the 4. This is 3 of the 4, 3 and a 10. And now we're up to the 4. So I'm going to do a decrease right here. And this is all on the V-neck side. So that was 4 and 11. Now I'm going to start over again. So this is 1, 1 and 12, 2 and 13, 3 and 14. So now we're going to go to the last 2 stitches and do my decrease right here, 4 and 15. And now I'm going to do another 5 rows to get my full 20. Now I'm going to bind off 5 stitches on the armhole side. Now I'm going to bind off another 5 and then bind off the remaining stitches and secure your final stitch. And here is your underarm shaping and the V-neck. And now we're going to put it together. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to put the shoulders together first. I have my back panel on the bottom, and I have 1/2 of my front with right sides together. So my V-neck part is in the center here, and my 2 armholes are lined up over here. So I'm going to find where all these laddered stitches are, which were the 2 rows of 5 decreases. And I'm going to just place stitch markers in here, pin this together. And then using that long tail that I had left, just going to insert a crochet hook, chain 1, and I'm just going to go across doing a slip stitch to bring these 2 pieces together stitch by stitch. You can also do a mattress stitch here if you would like. I'm doing slip stitches just because it's just so much faster. You can do this however you wish. And we're going to stop right there, cut a tail, and secure that side. And so you have your first shoulder seam put together, and that's what it looks like on the right side. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now we're going to put the sleeve in. So open this up and find where ends of the underarm shaping is. And I have my sleeve here, and I'm going to fold my sleeve in half so that I can find the center point at the top of the sleeve. So I find underarm shaping, and then don't stretch it because you want to make sure it's accurate. Here is my center point. Place that center point into the center point over here as well, which is marked with that seam. I'm going to do this in sections. I'm going to find the ends of the underarm shaping on both sides. It's sort of a sharp point that then goes down. So I'm going to find those 2 sections right here. I'm going to put a stitch marker to hold it together, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. And now I'm going to just start easing in the rest of the sleeve. You might have to roll it a little bit, but because everything is correctly counted, this sleeve fits in perfectly to the underarm shaping that we created. And there is the sleeve pinned in. So now you have a choice where you can either do a mattress stitch to put the sleeve together, or you can do slip stitches. I'm going to do slip stitches just because it's faster, but you are welcome to do this however you want. So I'm going to begin at this end. I'm going to insert my crochet hook, and I'm going to pull my working yarn through, and I'm going to chain 1. And now going through both sides, I'm just going to slip stitch into each stitch for the entire sleeve. And this is what this looks like so far. And I'm just going to keep doing this until the end. So I've put the whole thing in. I'm going to cut a tail and secure this edge here. And that is how that sleeve looks put inside. So now I'm going to do the other side, and I'll get back to you when we're ready to sew up the sides. So here are both of my sleeves inserted. Here is the correct side. You can see it fit in really nicely. We're going to seam the whole thing together. So we're also going to do this inside out. Flip the cardigan so that the right side is facing up. And then you're going to take these front halves, the V-neck half, you're going to fold it forward, and you're going to have the sleeve fold in half like this. We're going to do this one side at a time. I like to use the seams as my reference points. So the two parts of the arm seam, I'm just going to put a stitch marker there, hold those two together. I'm going to go all the way down the arm, and I'm going to pin the beginning of this rib together. So that's another easy reference point, stitch marker there. And then I'm just going to start putting stitch markers along the sleeve. And then down the front, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to find 5 rows of ribbing, and I'm going to put a stitch marker there. And then I'm just going to put stitch markers all the way down. And just whatever you do, don't pull vertically. We can unroll horizontally, but don't pull on anything because you're going to end up with an uneven tension. There are the stitch markers holding all of this together. And now I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to seam it up the side. So starting all the way on the end where my pleats are, I'm going to insert my crochet hook all the way into the end. I'm going to get my working yarn, chain 1, and I'm going to just do my slip stitches stitch for stitch all the way up the side, under the arm, and across the sleeve. And you can do a mattress stitch with this if you want. And we're just going to go all the way up to the end of the sleeve cup. And I will get back to you when this side is done. So here is the seaming, and now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I've put the whole sweater together. Here are all my seams, and you can see we have these nice pleats at the bottom. I've woven all of my loose threads. Here's the sleeve. It has just nice stretch to it. We're up to the last step, and we have our 2 stitch markers here showing where the V-neck begins. A knit one. I have a long pair of circular needles. These are number 7s, and I have some working yarn starting on the edge here. And now I'm just going to go along, and I'm going to pull up an even number of stitches around the entire perimeter of the whole sweater. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I get to the marked stitch, and then I'll show you what I do over there. Picked up all the stitches, and now I'm up to the stitch that the stitch marker is in. I'm going to pick up a stitch in that stitch, take off the stitch marker, and place it in that new stitch you've created. And then we're just going to keep going along. I've picked up all the stitches on the perimeter of the cardigan, and now I'm going to do a knit 2, purl 2 all the way across the whole thing. So I'm up to my marked stitch. Take the stitch marker off, and I'm going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 all into that stitch so that we still keep that nice sharp point of the V-neck. And I'm going to put my stitch marker into that center stitch we just made. And here is the finished product. So we can see here our nice ruffles along the top and the bottom, and we have our V-neck. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. If you make this project, please let me know. Bye-bye.